Game 1 is the longest recorded and rated chess game in history. This single game took over 20 hours. Wait a second, 20 hours? We have the 4 longest chess games in history. Okay, thank you have played some long chess games. Check out the games in this article and see if your marathon games match up. Warning, all but one of these games is over 200 moves. All right, so let's see. So as I think about myself, what is the longest game that I've ever played? Yeah, what is the longest game that I've ever played? I think I had a game that was like 180 moves, maybe. I think it was like 180, 190 against Zhu Chen some years back in Baikonze. So I guess I probably have a top 10 game. All right, number 1, Ivan Nikolic versus Goran Arsovich. Game 1 is the longest recorded and rated chess game in history. This single game took over 20 hours. Wait a second, 20 hours to end in a draw. The FIDE rule at that time allowed playing to win for up to 100 moves without a piece being captured or a pawn move being made in some endings, including rook and bishop versus rook. Today, no exceptions are allowed in the general 50 move rule. The endgame of this game is the famous rook and bishop versus rook, which is known to be extremely difficult. All right, so I guess you have some long game. I mean, okay, it's just a normal game. Ends up, I won't go through the whole game, obviously. But let's see what happens. So, okay, white's up some material. Game goes on. Game goes on. Game goes on. And the game goes on. Okay, so... Okay, so basically the game goes on. Keep rolling, keep seeing. Where do we go? La-di-da-da. Okay, so we get to this one with the pawn. Then eventually we keep going. 20-hour draw. Apparently, yeah, they played for 20 hours or so, they say. Okay. Okay. Well, the problem is also in this game, you see, basically white doesn't win the pawn right away. So eventually white probably somehow wins the pawn, I assume, or not. Does white ever win this pawn? White does end up winning the pawn. Okay. So eventually somehow white gets around and wins the pawn. Okay, and now it goes on. And goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And eventually it ends in a draw, I guess. After 269 moves. Berlin draw equals bad, but 20-hour draw equals all right. True. Okay, so what is number 2? Number 2, we have Alexandre Danin versus Sergei Azarov. 239 moves. Game 2 is the longest recorded and rated chess game where one of the players won. This game came with extra pressure as Danin had to win the game in order for his team to draw the match in the Czech League. Wow. Okay, so where does this... Oh, don't tell me this turns into rook and bishop versus rook 2. Okay. Okay, so white's obviously winning here. How does this game go 239 moves? White's just winning. Okay, this is just pretty standard winning technique. Okay. 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 So eventually, I guess white finds the right technique with a6 and with... Whoa, thank you to Maggle 575 with the 50 gifted subs. Thank you so much to Maggle 575. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the 50 gifted subs. Thank you. Wow. All right. So anyway, white ends up winning this game, I guess. Not very exciting end game. Okay, so let's keep going. Number 3, Laurent Fresnay versus Alexander Kostyanyuk. 237 moves. Game 3 is the runner-up for the longest game with victory. Like Game 1, this game ended with the famous rook and bishop versus rook endgame. 116 of the moves involved this endgame. Fresnay could have claimed a draw under the 50-move rule, but neither player was writing down the moves. All right. The amazing part of this game is that it was played under a rapid time control. Okay, well. Look, you guys. What do we have? Why does this look familiar? Every game is a rook and bishop versus rook endgame. Every single game is rook and bishop versus rook. And Kostyanyuk, I guess, ends up picking up the pawn eventually and wins the game. I thought this would be a fun article, but it looks like every single game is just rook and bishop versus rook. Yeah. And somehow, yeah, Alexander wins this game. Okay, it goes on. Hilarious. It's on, okay. Somehow he ends up losing this. Oh, he goes king d5, and now you end up in a bad end game. Here, okay. Here. Looks like a draw forever. Yeah, this was in rapid chess. Yeah. Okay. So basically this should have been a draw. It looks like it should have been 50 moves, but then something happens. And eventually you end up losing this game. Even though it's clearly 50 moves by this point already. How do you end up losing this? Okay, keeps going on. Oh, he got his rook trapped. Now rook b6. And king c6, is it? Yeah, king c6, and now you're winning. There. a2. And rook h2. And black wins. Was expecting 4 queens versus the king. Yeah, I mean, it's a random one, of course. But that's 239. Okay, what's number 4? Number 4 is Viktor Korchnoi versus Anatoly Karpov. Wait, 124 moves. Game 4 is included with this list for being the longest game ever played in a world championship match. Wait a second. I demand a recap. Or a recount, sorry. Wait a second. My game that I mentioned before was 180 moves. Why is my game not listed as number 4? Wait a second. Something's wrong with this. Wait, sorry, I have to look this up. Because unless I'm crazy... Let me see. Yeah, see, this is, yeah, okay, but my game should be in here. This is not fair, you guys. Because if I scroll to the top, let me change the scene. I guess this is a better scene. I have a game that I played against Zuchen in Vaikonse in 2004. Game ended in a draw, and at the bottom, you guys, it was a draw after 182 moves. So instead of putting Korchnoi's game in there, my game should have been in here, because I had a 182 move game. Anyway, read the title. It said the 4 longest games, didn't it? Or am I crazy? It says the 4 longest chess games in history. This is not the 4th longest game in history. But anyway, all right. They say Viktor Korchnoi versus Anatoly Karpov, 124 moves. Game 4 is included in this list for being the longest game ever played in a world championship match. Okay. Korchnoi is one of the most legendary players of all time. The game technically could have lasted longer, but Korchnoi's 124th move produced stalemate on the board. Okay, so what is this? Oh, it's this one with the 2 pawns on the edge. Yeah. This is a very ancient game. This one is the bishop and pawn versus bishop and pawn versus bishop and pawn versus the king one. I think this one also was I believe this was winning at some point, because I think Gary and I have actually I think Gary and I discussed this endgame at some point many years back, but it should have been winning, I think, for white at some point, but he made a mistake, and yeah, they get this one, and this is obviously a draw, even though the king is cut off. So yeah, this Karpov, of course, makes a draw, 124 moves. Okay, so that was the 4th one. Now it's your turn. What has your longest chess game been? Obviously, my longest chess game was 182 moves against Zhu Chen. There's David Howell versus Hari Krishna, which was 200 plus moves. Also nice. Very, very nice.